The children of Iluvatar was joined with one of the Ainur. And he who, alone of the forsaken elves, had seen the light of the trees of Valinor, with his last sight, gazed upon the Silmaril. Then the dwarves, taking the Nauglamir, passed out of Menegroth and fled eastwards through Region. The tidings went swiftly through the forest, and few of that company came over Aros, for they were pursued to the death as they sought the eastward road, and the Nauglamir was retaken and brought back in bitter grief to Melian the queen. Yet two there were of the slayers of Thingol who escaped from the pursuit on the eastern marches, and returned at last to their city far off in the Blue Mountains. And there in Nogrod they told somewhat of all that had befallen, saying that the dwarves were slain in Doriath by command of the Elven king, who thus would cheat them of their reward. Then great was the wrath and lamentation of the dwarves of Nogrod for the death of their kin and their great craftsmen, and they tore their beards and wailed. And long they sat, taking thought for vengeance. It is told that they asked aid from Belegost, but it was denied them, and the dwarves of Belegost sought to dissuade them from their purpose, but their counsel was unavailing, and ere long a great host came forth from Nogrod, and crossing over Gelion, marched westward through Beleriand. Upon Doriath a heavy change had fallen. Melian sat long in silence beside Thingol the king, and her thought passed back into the starlit years, and to their first meeting among the nightingales of Nan Elmoth in ages past. And she knew that her parting from Thingol was the forerunner of a greater parting, and that the doom of Doriath was drawing nigh. For Melian was of the divine race of the Valar, and she was a Maya of great power and wisdom. But for love of Elwë Singolo, she took upon herself the form of the elder children of Iluvatar, and in that union she became bound by the chain and trammels of the flesh of Arda. In that form she bore to him Luthien Tunuvia, and in that form she gained a power over the substance of Arda, and by the girdle of Melian was Doriath defended through long ages from the evils without. But now Thingol lay dead, and his spirit had passed to the halls of Mandos, and with his death a change came also upon Melian. Thus it came to pass that her power was withdrawn in that time from the forests of Neldoreth and Region, and as Galduin, the enchanted river, spoke with a different voice, and Doriath lay open to its enemies. Thereafter Melian spoke to none save to Mablung only, bidding him take heed to the Silmaril, and to send word speedily to Beren and Luthien in Ossiriand. And she vanished out of Middle-earth, and passed to the land of the Valar, beyond the western sea, to muse upon her sorrows in the gardens of Lorien, whence she came, and this tale speaks of her no more. Thus it was that the host of the Naugrim, crossing over Aros, passed unhindered into the woods of Doriath, and none withstood them, for they were many and fierce, and the captains of the grey elves were cast into doubt and despair, and went hither and thither purposeless. But the dwarves held on their way, and passed over the great bridge, and entered into Menegroth. And there befell a thing most grievous among the sorrowful deeds of the elder days. For there was battle in the 1,000 caves, and many elves and dwarves were slain, and it has not been forgotten. But the dwarves were victorious, and the halls of Thingol were ransacked and plundered. There fell Mablung of the Heavy Hand, before the doors of the treasury, wherein lay the Nauglamir, and the Silmaril was taken. At that time Beren and Luthien yet dwelt in Tal Gallen, the Green Isle, in the river Adurant, southernmost of the streams, that falling from Ered Lindon flowed down to join with Gelion. And their son Dior Eluhil had to wife Nimloth, kinswoman of Celeborn, prince of Doriath, who was wedded to the lady Galadriel. The sons of Dior and Nimloth were Elured and Elurin. And a daughter also was born to them, and she was named Elwing, which is star spray. For she was born on a night of stars, whose light glittered in the spray of the waterfall of Llanthir Lamath, beside her father's house. Now word went swiftly among the elves of Osiriand that a great host of dwarves bearing gear of war had come down out of the mountains and passed over Gelion at the Ford of Stones. These tidings came soon to Beren and Luthien, and in that time also a messenger came to them out of Doriath, telling of what had befallen there. Then Beren arose and left Tol Garlan, and summoning to him Dior his son, they went north to the river Askar, and with them went many of the green elves of Osirian. Thus it came to pass that when the dwarves of Nogrod, returning from Menegroth with diminished host, came again to Sarn Athrad, they were assailed by unseen enemies, for as they climbed up Gelion's banks burdened with the spoils of Doriath, suddenly all the woods were filled with the sound of elven horns, and shafts sped upon them from every side. There very many of the dwarves were slain in the first onset, but some, escaping from the ambush, held together and fled eastwards towards the mountains. And as they climbed the long slopes beneath Mount Dolmed, there came forth the shepherds of the trees, and they drove the dwarves into the shadowy woods of Ered Lindon, whence it is said came never one to climb the high passes that led to their homes. In that battle by Sarn Athrad, Beren fought his last fight, and himself slew the lord of Nogrod, and wrested from him the necklace of the dwarves. But he dying laid his curse upon all the treasure. Then Beren gazed in wonder on the self-same jewel of Feanor that he had cut from Morgoth's iron crown, now shining set amid gold and gems by the cunning of the dwarves. And he washed it clean of blood in the waters of the river. And when all was finished, the treasure of Doriath was drowned in the river Askar, and from that time the river was named anew Rathloriel, the golden bed. But Beren took the Nauglamir and returned to Tol Garlan. Little did it ease the grief of Luthien to learn that the lord of Nogrod was slain, and many dwarves beside. But it is said and sung that Luthien, wearing that necklace and that immortal jewel, was the vision of greatest beauty and glory that has ever been outside the realm of Valinor. And for a little while the land of the dead that live became like a vision of the land of the Valar, and no place has been since so fair, so fruitful, or so filled with light. Now Dior, Thingol's heir, bade farewell to Beren and Luthien, and departing from Llanthir Lamath with Nimloth his wife, he came to Menegroth and abode there. And with them went their young sons, Elured and Elurin, and Elwing their daughter. Then the Sindar received them with joy, and they arose from the darkness of their grief for fallen kin and king, and for the departure of Melian. And Dior Elohil set himself to raise anew the glory of the kingdom of Doria. There came a night of autumn, and when it grew late, one came and smote upon the doors of Menegroth, demanding admittance to the king. He was a lord of the green elves, hastening from Osiriand, and the door wards brought him to where Dior sat alone in his chamber. And there in silence he gave to the king a coffer, and took his leave. But in that coffer lay the necklace of the dwarves, wherein was set the Silmaril. And Dior, looking upon it, knew it for a sign that Beren Echamian and Luthien Tinuviel had died indeed, and gone where go the race of men to a fate beyond the world. Long did Dior gaze upon the Silmaril, which his father and mother had brought beyond hope out of the terror of Morgoth, and his grief was great that death had come upon them so soon. But the wise have said that the Silmaril hastened their end, for the flame of the beauty of Luthien, as she wore it, was too bright for mortal lands. Then Dior arose, and about his neck he clasped the Nauglamir, And now he appeared as the fairest of all the children of the world, of threefold race, of the Edain, and of the Eldar, and of the Maiar, of the blessed realm. But now the rumor ran among the scattered elves of Beleriand that Dior, Thingol's heir, wore the Nauglamir, and they said, "A Silmaril of Feanor burns again in the woods of Doriath." And the oath of the sons of Feanor was waked again from sleep. For while Luthien wore the necklace of the dwarves, no elf would dare to assail her. But now, hearing of the renewal of Doriath and of Dior's pride, the seven gathered again from wandering, and they sent to him to claim their own. But Dior returned no answer to the sons of Feanor, and Celegorm stirred up his brothers to prepare an assault upon Doriath. They came at unawares in the middle of winter, and fought with Dior in the 1,000 caves. And so befell the second slaying of elf by elf. There fell Celegorm by Dior's hand, and there fell Hurufin and dark Caranthir. But Dior was slain also, and Nimloth his wife, and the cruel servants of Celegorm seized his young sons and left them to starve in the forest.